YouTube. Oh, okay. Didn't realize.
It's maybe two people on YouTube watching. Don't worry about
Oh, okay.
that. We actually have a surprisingly small audience. It's just so interconnected, right?
Oh,
That
I see. It's that, but you do post it later to YouTube.
yes, yeah, we
Uh,
post it later to YouTube. But like I'm saying, like most of these
it's not the
videos,
kind of thing.
they don't get, we're talking about like hundreds of views. We're not talking about like thousands of views.
Right.
It's
Okay.
just like it's all made to make you feel close, right? Like,
Right.
all right, you ready?
I'm ready, I
You're
think.
gonna do great, Renee.
Ready as I'll ever be. Ready as I'll ever be.
All right, ready as we will ever be. Welcome, everybody, to the weekly edition of the Not Your Average Investor Show. Today, we are talking with one of, I would say, up there with one of the most experienced investors that we have on here. She's got has a range of experience from multifamily, self-management, doing it all herself, single-family investments around the country, and a lot of lessons to share here on tax savings, on reserves and strategy, on unconventional financing. We're going to get into all of it with Renee Palladini today. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez. And as I said, investor extraordinaire coming from Napa Valley, California, a beautiful place in the country that we all wish we could spend more time in. And more than anything, someone with so much investing experience that I can't wait to pick her brain here. Renee, welcome to the show.
Everyone.
Good to have you. And Renee, you've
Thank
said
you.
you've watched this before.
Yes.
We have a little tradition that we start the show of. Do you know what that's called?
Yes, the roll
Yeah, the
call.
Rogo baby. All right, we got your portfolio manager Fritz Brown first in the chat saying hello. We got our leadoff
Hi,
hitter John
Fritz.
Henning checking in. We got the early bird Dean Curry with a good afternoon. We got Rashawn Delavalade.
Hi,
Delavalade.
hi, Rashawn.
Hey,
She's
Rashawn,
on
good to
my
have you.
team.
I think I got that. Michelle John in the house, the logistics maven of Jacksonville, Florida here. Michelle, good to have you. We got Chris Lee from Fernandina Beach. We got the fairy godmother right down the street from you in Monterey, California, Jen Filson. We got
Hi,
Mark
Jen.
Sauer from Cincinnati, Ohio. We got LinkedIn Ed Lowry here in Jax Beach. We got the man everybody knows, also from California, Noah Rendari. We got the guy that's ready to rock in Rockland, Louis Hudno. Lewis, I gotta make some kind of like the triple R, ready to rock in Rockland. We'll figure it out, Lewis. Jeff Pettijohn from Missouri checking in. We got the MVP, Lee Bishop, in the house. Lee, good to have you back. Just moved to Galveston, Texas. Had some time off here from the show. Good to have the MVP back. We got Le Monsieur Reggie Fonse from Le Inland Empire saying bonjour in San Jose, connecting to Seattle. So right down the street from you again. Who
Yeah.
else we got in here? Oh, our regulars, Gary and Rosalind Riley from Murrieta, California. We regard you. You looks like you're pulling the California crowd, Renee. I feel like
Oh boy.
everybody. We got. Oh, speaking of which, Ernest Gargas from San Jose, California. That's a new name, Ernest. Happy to have you here, my friend. Hope you make a tradition of hanging out with us. Oh, the first family of the Not Your Average Investor Show, Ken and Carolyn Merlin from Silicon Valley. The patriarch and matriarch. Ooh, we salute you, Ken and Carolyn. Good to have you. Misty and Troy Johnson in the house from Colorado. Good to have you all. Jag Chata, Milady Jag. Good to have you. Brikiley Holden in the house. Good to have you, Brikiley. Who else we got here? Check it. Leslie Wilson, your kindred spirit, the maven from the mountains of Denver.
Hi,
Uh,
Leslie. I don't know her, but
yeah, Leslie, Renee saw your show and she was like, I really relate to Leslie. That's one of the reasons I wanted to be on the show. So,
there were a
uh,
couple things on there. I'm like, oh yeah.
yeah, yeah. I learn a couple things every time I talk to Leslie. Who else we got in here? Linda Evans from the Villages in Florida. Linda, good to have you back. All right, here we go. Oh, Leslie says, "Oh, thanks." Okay, Renee, as we said, you come here with a dearth of experience. You had a management company. You have done multifamily. You've dipped your toe in multiple real estate asset classes spanning 14, 15, 25 years of kind of like of real estate investing. And somehow you ended up landing on this, lesser glorified, kind of like asset class that people don't talk too much about, which is the single family rental, long-term rental asset class. I would love to just kind of understand what drew you to single family rentals in general.
Well, actually, my first, I was called like I became an accidental investor. My first rental as a landlord and as owning it was I rented my house out when I was relocating a house I lived in. So, I mean, I actually started with that. But so that was the initial one. But really what drew me is I'd done a lot of research, belonged to a network that, I featured a lot of information on that. Read over the years, and I also had been in and had at the time a number of other types of another asset classes within real estate. So and I'm big on. I just really felt I wanted to diversify, and so that's kind of how I went with single family rentals. I like the idea that you're not tying all of your investment capital into one large property, for example, which you just run more risk. There's more potential for ups and downs. There's not a lot of balance to it. So I'm trying to kind of achieve a financial balance, and minimizing risk basically across my portfolio at the time in
Interesting.
2017.
Yeah, interesting. What I'm hearing there, I'll be honest, Greg hates it when I talk about bets because he doesn't want to like associate real estate with gambling. But
Family.
in my head, I'm hearing if you can make multiple smaller bets across different things, it feels good, right? Like instead of a whole pile of money in a commercial investment or multifamily investment, to have multiple different homes spread out in
Right.
different areas, it allows for kind of like smaller entry points and more diversification and stuff like that. When
Yeah,
you
it's kind of like the stock market. If you diversify your portfolio versus putting, all your money into Nvidia or something. I mean, you're just going to run a lot of up and down, a lot of volatility, a lot of risk. In my opinion, a lot of risk. But again, I'm more conservative investor. I think that way. So I just didn't want to have the ups and downs. And the timing at the time, I already had some commercial office property, and I can say it was a wise move not to go into it. That kind of was an alternative, but that to not go into that because a couple of years later, after the 2017 initial purchases, we had COVID. And as most people probably know, the commercial office market just took a dive. Vacancy is up, revenues are down, lending possibilities were really poor. So I mean, a lot of people at risk of losing buildings because of the time period. But so I felt like I made the right choice in
yeah,
going
yeah,
single family.
yeah,
My home stayed rented pretty much through COVID. I don't remember, maybe one vacancy.
yeah, yeah.
So,
If you
and
I don't know your entire investment history, but I know you've been doing single family with JWB since 2017. And if you started
I,
diversifying out of commercial in 2017, I would say that's pretty freaking good timing.
yeah,
based
yeah. Well, I still have commercial, and I've had small multi-unit, fourplex, duplex, apartments, that kind of thing in small, but condo, and so I've had single family. I had a condo rental in Phoenix a few years prior. I
Yeah.
sold it around
So,
that time.
so as someone that started, you're like getting into this asset class, you like the idea of like smaller bets spread out, but you originally started as an accidental landlord, doing it yourself, and you're very
A few
hands-on.
years.
Yeah, for a few years. The Did you immediately start looking outside of from where you can drive to? Like, was the idea of like being passive and having a property management company do it for you, or investing in a different area code? Was that something that you had to overcome, or was that natural to you already?
Well, when I rented my home out, I had a fairly long-term tenant, a couple of years. I think I might have handled with him. It was easy to deal with. It was just the rent was on time and so forth. But I had already moved away. The next round, when he was moving, then I did go with the property management company. It didn't make sense unless you're right there. I think Yeah, prior to going out of state, I invested in the fourplex that was in my local area in Napa, California. So with a family member, partner, and and that was, yeah, that was, I would say that was before. I'm trying to think of the timing of everything. Then a few years later, I did do my first out of state investment, was Austin, Texas, a duplex. And I did do that. And being, of course, I didn't manage that. But that was a bit of a risk. I went through a broker. Luckily, I guess I took I guess I lucked out in a sense because they could have gone bad, just because he was selling it to me, but also referred me to management that was quite good. So sometimes, it can go the other way. If you don't have good management, it makes all the difference. I'm in California, it was in Texas. So, but it did well. And
Yeah, that's awesome.
and yeah, and then around that time, and then the condo in Phoenix didn't do so well long term. So I mean, you don't have everything's not a winner, but
Yeah.
some of them are.
Can you talk to me about, so you went, it sounds like you tried a couple different places. You had Austin, you had Phoenix, and
Austin,
eventually,
Phoenix.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well,
Sorry, what?
and eventually you found your way to Jacksonville, right? Like,
Right.
what is kind of like, what were you looking for in markets and how did that like idea evolve for you till you got to Jacksonville?
Well, again, I had been, kind of I do a lot of research and reading before I pull the trigger on something. So I had been doing this research for a number of years and kind of narrowing down or finding various potential markets that I would want to invest in out of state. Just, viewed webinars and so forth. And property providers were presented within this network I was involved in. And they're an education network. They didn't do any direct selling, but so then, so I'd had a fairly good, I had kind of fairly good idea of certain criteria. I wanted to be in the Sun Belt. I definitely wanted to diversify and not be in, say, all state, various cities all in Florida or something. So in 2017, when sold a commercial property, larger property, and timing was right. It was just one of those things kind of came up. And again, I was in a partnership with that. And general partnership. But so the partners decided, it was time, and turned out to be a very good time to do it. So so basically, everybody, after as the sale was coming up, it took a while to go through. It takes a long time, a number of months, and when it looked more like it was going to happen, I pretty much I already kind of had Jacksonville in my radar. I had already researched the MSA. I have certain criteria I tend to look for, things I know Greg's talked about, you've talked about in the show, steady population growth, the in-migration trends, the U-Haul trends, who's moving in and out, certain areas, certain positive, what I think are positive market factors, schools, medical, and care, quality, that type of thing, military installations, climate, a lot of things. And I didn't want to be in real volatile markets. There are some over time when I was following this, Vegas, I think at one point was quite volatile, went up really fast and then it went down really fast. So I was looking for real stability again. That was my quest. But and then I was also looking at Texas and Ohio at the time and other states. So it kind of had it somewhat narrowed down. Then it was when it was getting close to the closing on that property, I thought, well, I really need to make a decision. So I decided to take all of the profit or capital out of that deal and just basically allocate it amongst three different market areas fairly equivalently. So that and then of course I talked to different providers that kind of was connected with, and when JW, that's how I ended up with JWB. So I was really
Interesting.
confident and fairly confident in them at the time, and more confident now. So
Well, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in a second. So what
yeah,
I'm hearing from you is, something that, like you said, we do talk a lot about on the show. It's always great to hear from someone. Basically, this idea of a stable, long-term growth market, and this idea that like I, it's funny, right? if you've listened to the show a lot, you know that I come from Miami and I make every comparison to Miami all the
Right.
time. And I never shut up
And
about
yeah,
that because it's part of my identity. But, when first time I went to Vegas, I was like, oh, this is like a manufactured Miami, just based on like South Beach and the Strip, right? But now I see it more from an economic development perspective of like, oh yeah, it's one of these towns where construction and hospitality creates these like big boom or bust cycles
exactly.
based on how people are traveling there and like discretionary income and these kinds of things. So it can look really sexy at sometimes, and then other times you lose your shirt. Um, so
Right.
that's an interesting observation. So we talk a lot about this idea of Jacksonville having like a non-sexy, well-balanced economy of logistics and military and healthcare and finance and fintech, and maybe fintech sounds sexy, but everything else is not like one of these things where people are rushing to go to bet on the upside of. They're just betting on this kind of like constant need for it. And I wonder, when you were looking at stability, you mentioned the U-Haul report. You saw that there was like an in-migration to the Sun Belt. When you're looking for a well-balanced economy, what are the factors you look at? Are you looking at industry mix? Are you just kind of looking at
I
long-term
am.
performance and boom
Most
and busts?
definitely. Most definitely. I ruled out, when I had various ones I was considering, I was looking definitely for a balanced, diverse business econ or, different types of industries. So it
Yeah,
was well balanced. I mean, I actually looked at Orlando as well, but to me, that was all tourism and Disney World.
yeah,
So it just, again, that just kind of didn't check the box, I guess, as what you would say. But so that's a key factor, and the lifestyle features with the other, with, access to, education for residents as well, education, medical care, that kind of thing,
yeah,
arts, climate, good outdoor activities, and so forth. But definitely, I did look at, again, reading a lot, and hearing webinars and things at the time, or watching webinars, that, that it seemed Jacksonville had a really stable but growing business environment, with businesses relocating to the area. And that's kind of how I selected the markets, was that I went to, was, is this, does this seem viable long term? Because this was a long term. I wasn't looking to invest and then cash out a couple years or something. So looking to hold.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, definitely. I mean, so population trends and business relocation trends, or
Yeah.
business growth trends.
All
And there's a
things
lot of data out there.
all
There's
things that
quite a
have
bit of
proved you
data.
right, right? Like you've been proved very right with these
Yeah. On
with the,
Jacksonville, probably more than any, so, but, I look for
yeah,
their key industries that are, or
yeah,
employment centers, that type of thing. So, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's kind of
No,
how I select the markets.
recently rated the number one relocation city in America, right? Like
I heard
corporate
that. Yeah.
headquarter relocations. Yeah. So that's huge. Um, I want to hit on something that I think we're probably going to talk about multiple times, because I think it's a big piece on how you think. And you've already brought it up a couple of times. This idea of long-term mindset. As you sent me your notes, and as you sent me kind of like and as we've gotten to know each other ahead of the show, to me it's really clear that you think long term, right? Like from from even you thinking about diversifying out of commercial and the things that you were already doing well, to how you're analyzing markets, um, and and you just mentioned it right now. Can you just kind of like, you said before this call that you were a little nervous that people just like to hear get rich quick stuff, but you think long term, and this is how
I don't
you.
think this group, but I have had people. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. Well, just
Yeah.
talk
I've
to
had
me through
people
kind of like
ask
the
me,
conversations that you have when people are thinking about real estate as a get rich
right.
quick, and how you just, you feel how you feel this message hits and why it's important for thinking long term in this.
I mean, I have had people who've asked advice, or, wanted me to kind of mentor them or whatever. And with regard to real estate investing, once they know what I've done, what I've been doing. And I find that it's hard if somebody's looking at an immediate type of thing, they like to be successful or get rich quick or whatever. It's not, I've had the same person, one in particular, who was interested in flipping. I said, well, I don't do that. I've never flipped. And it's just not for me. I feel it's only for a certain, certain skill set. If you're a contractor, that'd be great. But, and certainly not in my area, which was very high priced at the time, still is. But, so there are different things you can do. I realize there's other types of, buy and repair, renovate and, refinance and sell or whatever. But, I just, figured I wanted to move, a good amount of money out of California. Honestly, I didn't feel I wasn't looking locally for replacement properties when I first decided to kind of expand into this and do that 1031 exchange in 2017. And even before that, it is a long game. I think real estate investing is buy and hold. And I mean, you've got to kind of put the time in or, put the thought into it. It's not going to be, and the research maybe, it's just not going to be something that's going to, in a year time or two, that you're going to go, oh, wow, I made a lot of money. It takes time and the returns compound, especially with appreciation. So, it's compounding every year. If it's 4.8% or whatever appreciation is this year and each year, it's adding upon itself. So I think the growth is, or the value creation gets better as time goes on. I mean, it improves or goes faster rate, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, yeah.
But
We say
yeah,
I mean, you're from Napa Valley, right? Like we say,
yes,
buy and hold real estate ages like a fine wine, right? Like
exactly. There you
it's
go.
over time.
Right. So yes, exactly. A fine wine will, the more aged they are, a lot of times in reds, the much more valuable they're more cost expensive they are. So
Renee, is this a lesson that you had to learn based on something that happened, based on a story that somebody told you, or is this just kind of like your de facto, oh, I get compounding interest and I get all these other
yeah,
things happening over time, and that's why I came to this asset class?
yeah, I kind of came into investing in real estate with probably the financial management mindset that I already had or had developed over the years. So, uh, and then again, I've been in the areas in real estate, so I had a good amount of working experience. Around it. Yeah, I don't know that it is not because somebody explained it to me explicitly. It's just and I do read a lot, and I always like to learn. So I would just every opportunity. I mean, I think even during my early career, I was taking real estate investing classes just so to learn.
Yeah.
Once I had my license or even before that. But so yeah, kind of it pairs well, I guess. It's important in my opinion. I mean, it helps to be good, have good financial management skills.
Mhm. Yeah, that
You
makes
don't
sense.
have to be an accountant, and I'm not. So but just kind of having and kind of have that long term projecting. How is this maybe going to work? You never know, for sure the returns, but you can it's kind of a bit like building blocks in a sense. I can't really, it's hard to explain, but
Yeah.
anyway,
It's tough to explain. That's why we host a show about it and we talk to a bunch of people about
yeah.
it because most people don't get it, right? Like
Well,
it's
really, okay, yeah,
yeah, it's a tough one.
yeah.
So
So
then let's go back to all right. So you've had this experience in real estate in multiple different ways. You are now diversifying markets and you're looking at stable markets. You're looking at Texas, Ohio, and Jacksonville. And you have this long-term mindset. And then from what I heard in your notes, then a friend tells you about JWB. Can you tell me a little bit about why you ended up picking like you so
WB specifically.
yeah, why JWB specific? How did that happen?
Well, again, actually, no, it wasn't a friend, but the network I belong to,
Mhm.
JWB, was one of the featured providers. I think I'm pretty sure I saw a webinar, or maybe more than one, that was presented by one of the principals at the time prior to 2017. So I had already kind of been familiar, and they were one of the providers. So I kind of went through. They did and do kind of pre-vet provide property providers,
Mhm.
certain set of criteria. Again, it's just very and somewhat analytical. They just have a set of criteria and they do vet them. And I'd been following along or and a member of this network for quite some time. So just to learn, even though I didn't have the money when I first started to really invest in this kind of scale, but um, so it really wasn't. that I interviewed various Jacksonville providers. It was more of, do you want to go with, this provider in Orlando, or I don't remember if there was Miami, but for example, so again, it was kind of, I sort of did my market area
Yeah.
narrowing down first, then providers were kind of fell into place
Yeah.
once in those market areas. I didn't consider every area, but areas I kind of was familiar with. So
Yeah. That's still
search already.
that's still a more advanced strategy than most people, right? Like most people aren't
Really?
doing market analysis first. Like we preach this idea of like finding the best providers. It sounds like based on this real estate referral network that you're a part of, you trusted the idea that they had the network of providers. So you did your
Right.
market research for what fit for you. And then, this like
Jacksonville
validation.
fit.
Yeah, Jacksonville fit. You had validation from another expert that you trusted,
Right.
and
And then
therefore
I
you went
talked to
with a
Greg.
provider. Yeah,
And
and
then,
then
it
and then
wasn't,
you
it wasn't 100% in my mind until, basically, the first communications or whatever with the company.
yeah,
And with,
tell me about that because in your notes you said it felt really different.
yeah, it did. It was actually because, a lot of times with property providers, they do similar what you do, renovating, or what JWB does, renovating or new building. They're basically selling property, and I've done that too. So I know the difference when somebody's just trying to sell me something. So what I liked about, it was just JWB, it was just was a really different approach. Sorry, I'm looking to my notes here, but
You're good. You're good.
they yeah, when I talk with Greg, of course I was used to people just kind of laying out, here's the properties we have, and this and this about the properties. Well, so I kind of started with that, and it was sort of like slow down, and he didn't even bring out any. I think I don't remember if or how you didn't do that first. There was a written questionnaire at the time. You had to answer questions about, so it was very goal oriented. Yes, they asked questions about my goals, what I wanted to achieve, what dollar amounts. I mean, they go very specific.
Yeah.
And, you know, in particulars, like, am I going to use like IRA funds or 401k, that kind of stuff. So they really got to know kind of financially, in a sense, for the investment purpose, who I was.
Yeah.
And then from there, I think one thing I ask a lot of questions usually. So one thing I did when we did the online thing, I had a lot of questions about the specific, where do you build the homes? Where are they specifically? Because I wasn't familiar with that. So even, I kind of knew about the MSA, but I wanted to drill it down into, what's the west side, what's the east side, what's the north, south, So he went through that and gave very detailed information, answered my questions, and that just helped me with my due diligence. So I felt confident in the fact, and they also explained how the company operated,
Mhm.
what the processes were. So I became comfortable with their market area expertise at the time. So then I looked at properties, but
Yep.
so it was kind of an easy decision.
You know,
So it was a very different approach.
yeah. You know what I love about it, Renee, is I'm here like 5 years later. This is 8 years after you had this conversation. I'm 5 years into my experience trying to like explain JWB to the world. And the best thing, kind of like some of the best stuff that we've come up with is this idea of vetting providers, then market, then property, and like how you actually vet providers being testing their area expertise, like asking these like questions. Are they trying to build a plan for you based on your goals, or are they trying to sell you a property?
Right. And walk
Like
away.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
and
that
how
happens.
how do
And
they tie
yeah,
in with you long term? And it's really cool to hear that you were doing this 8 years ago before we even realized we had to be
yes.
talking to people about this, right? Like it shows your deep level of expertise.
Well, another thing is I was looking for having not a lot, but minimal prior experience with out of state management companies. Is that I was looking for ideally, and it didn't happen in all three markets, but to have the provider. I didn't call it vertically integrated at the time, but JWB had the vertically integrated business model,
Mhm.
which means they're with you still during the management all the phases. So it's the, the building and whatever, getting the tenant, getting the property lease, tenant in, that type thing, the turnovers, it's all in-house. I think that at the time of what, wasn't sure about that as to whether it be economical or not, but it turns out it is more cost effective, I think. And most importantly, there was just one less, I guess, one less risk box to sort of check off that, okay, it eliminates the risk of me ending up with, say, a management company that is just somebody they refer to that, and then, if there's a problem, the person who sold me the property or the company who sold the property, they're kind of like out of, they're not responsible. They're not there. They're not being held or they're going to have to be held accountable for any kind of issue. So again, I was sort of minimizing any possible risk. And that really has made a difference. I've seen over time the quality difference, quite honestly,
You just made
in
my
my
little
experience.
marketer heart sing, right?
You
Because
what?
you made my little marketer heart sing, right? Because the term vertically integrated. I remember the day that Greg and I were like on a morning
I've heard it.
run, and I'm just like vertically, like this is how you guys are different, right? Like it was like a year
You are.
into, maybe a year plus into like this show, and I'm like, this is how you guys are different. Like this idea of all under one roof is the and like how much influence you have on the experience from beginning to lifetime is really the number one thing, right? And like you're describing it as, hey, one place where the person that sold it to me is the person that manages it, and therefore I know that like long term that you're gonna be doing things that are in my interest because you're the one that made the promise.
Right.
Is like at the heart of all of this, right?
Yeah, it's like they're partnering. It's like partnering with you towards your future success rather than
Yeah,
just selling you properties.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
they still have skin in the game, so to speak. But so, I mean, and I think it does make it, like I said, it does make a difference in the, sometimes in the financial outcomes that you have, but also definitely in the experience.
Yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah. Well,
and to me, good management does make all the difference. Great management, I should say, makes all the difference.
tell me more about that. What do you mean by that?
Well, and, and from just an experiential standpoint, the stress level of things going wrong, I just always, always, but over time I've noticed and followed, and I keep tabs on everything on my properties as much as possible. But I do feel that, I see that they're well maintained in turnovers. For example, I know it's expensive a lot of times to turnover, but they come back looking when you see the video walkthroughs. Like brand new again. So I know that I'm able to probably get a quality tenant in a quicker time frame because the property is above average or above par or whatever. And again, I don't have that much specific knowledge to the market area, but I just think it's a good quality product and that they're putting out to rent there. And I check it online. No, I can't remember what source, but I think Zillow or some of those all have all the photos. And so and So I mean, that's one way. The other is kind of attending to things and taking care of things. I mean, essentially, I think I would say make or break your investment, but I mean, a management company that's not taking care of a property. And again, I've managed properties, so and I've had owners who didn't want things taken care of. But what I've seen, and, when owners do that over time, is the quality of your property goes down. And the cost later is much more than the cost would have been to just fix it up as you go. So again, I have that experience from my career, from my work, taking that done. So to know that, and I can see the difference. Things seem to be taken care of, ongoing basis. If you have maintenance problems or whatever, I just have no issues with that. With
Well,
JWB, and it can go the other way. I've had that experience. So in that case, it makes my job harder because I have to kind of follow up on things or say, no, I do want to fix this fence that blew down. I don't want to defer it till the tenant moves out because I believe that the tenant should have a fenced yard. I'm just throwing out an example.
yeah, 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 yeah. Well,
Yeah,
so that
and it
actually
should
is
be
one of the things that we said we're going to do is we're going to jump into your portfolio early and
okay.
then kind of
Yes.
like
Okay.
reverse engineer some stories. But since you brought
Certainly.
this up and LinkedIn Ed asked this in the Q&A,
Sure.
LinkedIn Ed's asking, I'm sure we'll get there, but I'll be interested to hear Renee's rankings and results for each of the three markets she focused in on. And she's still invested in those markets to maintain her diversification. So you mentioned Ohio, you mentioned Texas, you mentioned Jacksonville with JWB. Are you still in those other markets? And how has the
And
Jacksonville and JWB experience fared in comparison to those other markets?
it's definitely above. I would say if I'm ranking them, it's number one.
Oh,
So the best. I mean, I honestly say that I'm not just trying to market for the company, but the other area I'm in is the Houston MSA,
mhm.
a little bit north of Houston, Spring, Texas. I still have the three original properties. I'm sorry, two of the three original that I bought there, and then I had purchased another one along the way. So and I had sold one that was not in Spring, but down in a different area of Houston. It just after a long time period, it was just not performing and decided to cut it loose. And it takes me a long time to do that. I actually, spend a lot of thought on it. I don't overreact when things go wrong, but it just wasn't performing. So I
Mm.
sold it and exchanged. But and actually it was a good market. I also timed the market. I mean, it turned out to be a good market. But and I still have one property in Cleveland. Likewise, over time, not because they were that badly performing, but it just was a good market to sell into. And for various reasons, I felt like I could do better. I've actually sold those, or at least two of the ones, in exchange into Jacksonville at a later point in time. So
Okay.
I felt
All
that
right.
I felt that I could do better with in Jacksonville than I could. And Cleveland's, I've heard it talked about that it isn't as a high appreciating market. It's more of a flat appreciation. I mean, the rents are okay, but the properties I had were quite a bit older too. So the rents were fine and coming, maybe comparable, not quite big because older properties, and I think they were smaller, but the maintenance and the weather is harsh on things. So I mean, there's a lot of repairs, so the returns aren't there. So I mean, just kind of there was a pretty good market the last couple of years for selling. So I
Yeah.
did not at the same time, but one year, one the next.
Interesting. All right. Greg is going to be very sad to have missed a show where somebody else is talking down on Cleveland. That's good.
And I'm not, I've been trying to put Cleveland down, and I'm good for good management, okay management there. It's just,
Yeah, yeah,
I
that's
just
good.
felt that I
It's not
felt
the
I could do
management.
better.
It's yeah. What we talk about is the market in
Yeah,
Cleveland. You said
yeah,
exactly what we talk about in Cleveland, right? It's got higher cash flow maybe, but it doesn't have the appreciation rate. It's not a growing market, and
right.
the actual asset class gets more beat up, right? Like it's a harsher climate,
It's a
harder
harsher
to
climate. The
manage.
properties I held were quite a bit older, so than most of JWB inventory, 1920s, one of them was 1920s home. So when I looked at the end of each year, I look monthly, but then when I really evaluate at the end of each year, well, how did this property do? It just was creating more losses
Mhm.
in certain areas, in certain properties. So I keep an eye on that. They're great tax write-offs when they happen, but but nonetheless, I felt like and it might be better to move into Jacksonville and we can go through it. Like if I can see I can give you the timing if I can
Let's
see
do
the
it. Let's
chart.
do it.
So
Let's get into that right now. All right. So we're gonna
yeah,
we're gonna put on Renee's kind of like investing history on here. We're gonna tease out some lessons. First, this is Renee's experience. These are real numbers, right? So this is not like a promise of future performance. This is just exactly what happened. And when you're getting into new investments, do your own due diligence. But here it is. It's an impressive, what is this, 13 properties, Renee? I see you starting
13.
in
I'm going
2000.
on 14.
Oh
So
yeah?
yeah, I'm buying another one now
Okay,
in
right
in
on.
escrow. Yeah.
Cool. Love
It's
that.
not
Love
on
it.
there though. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So starting in 2017, looks like you picked up three in cash in 2017. I'm assuming that was what you spoke about. Those were the three properties that you had nine properties. You went three different markets,
Right.
three properties, bought them in cash, 1031 exchange.
Actually, let's see. Love's Village Pond and Liston, two were cash. One was financed. Liston was financed on that initial exchange because
Mhm.
I was just trying to make the numbers work to use all of the money. I didn't want to pay any
Got
capital
it.
gains tax at that point. So basically, I took the loan out to have the extra property. I had enough for the down payment. Didn't want to take any other cash out at the time from anything else. To what the purchase price was 120. One, I think it said there. So, anyway, I had a little left over, so I decided to do, so I did three in each market, but those three were 1031 properties. Then, it's kind of weird in there, but I think we'll list and close later because of the loan process. They would have closed in
Got
February if it
it.
was all cash. So then the Timmerman Lane, I bought it outside of a 1031 just as an additional, and then Timmerman Court, that was cash, and then Timmerman Court, it was from some other funds that I had available. Timmerman Court,
And that
same thing.
that was all in 2017, right? So you had
Yeah,
kind of like
throughout spring, winter, spring, and then Timmerman Court was, I think, what, in October 2017, the fall. So like
interesting.
late in the year.
Okay. So at
Yeah,
that point you
so
hadn't really experienced JWB very much, but you experienced the buying process.
right.
Was that kind of just like you had extra funds, you had one more property somewhere? Was like the decision kind
Yeah,
of like I want more Jacksonville, or just like, oh, I kind of like this process, so I'm gonna go here.
right. On those later properties, the Timmerman Court and Timmerman Lane, or outside of the 1031 exchange.
Hmm.
Yeah, I had some, I liquidated something or other, maybe in stock portfolio stuff or whatever. And just, yeah, I was having good experience. I was confident with Jacksonville at the time. So I thought, these came up and I was trying to kind of accelerate the growth of my portfolio. So
Got
I
it.
took a chance and added those two more, one with the loan and one with cash. It had to do with more my financial, how much cash I had available or wanted to part with at the time.
Got it. And then
There
it
you go.
looks like about a little bit over a year later, right? End of
Yeah.
2018, you picked up another three.
Okay. Yeah, the four. Then that was the end of year 2018. And the two in, I'm sorry, they're hard to read, but the two in the early part of January, those closing dates, purchase dates or
Hmm.
closing dates, those were the result of the fourplex. We sold the fourplex
Mm.
here in California. I did six properties. Again, wanted to just didn't want to take any boot or very minimal if I had to on the exchange. So I wanted to reinvest it all. And the interest rates were pretty good then.
Hmm.
I think they were kind of honestly, I think they were close to what you can buy down now. So they're like 5 point, I say mid fives to high fives. So I somehow remember 5.875 on those ones. So I financed four, and the two fire towers were cash, right?
Hmm.
And sorry, where was I going with that?
Oh, we're just
So
talking about
anyway,
these
rates were
these
good.
purchases.
So
Yeah.
I decided again to kind of accelerate, into the whole accelerate the portfolio, basically accelerate into the growth and finance those. And because rates were reasonable for that time period, and that was kind of in that end of 2018 to the holidays, early
Got it.
2019.
Got it. So this was another property, like you said it was like a multifamily or a commercial that kind of like came
Right. It was
due.
four apartments,
Yeah.
fourplex apartment unit.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So fourplex
And we've had that I did
apartment.
that for 20 years. So, it had run, I mean, it did cycles. And again, I did own it with a partner. So,
Yeah.
you have to accommodate sometimes what the partner wants to. I didn't necessarily want to sell, but
Yeah.
in the end, my cash flow is far better
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
have less
Yeah.
work to do. So, yeah.
And you used a loan to parlay this into multiple single family homes, and
Yes.
then you waited out another like almost 3 years, right?
Yes.
Like two
Yeah.
plus
Dude.
until
Yeah.
October of 2021. It looks
Plymouth.
like you picked up another one.
Yeah, Plymouth was the result of which exchange? I'm pretty sure I made a note of what I can't remember. I bought Plymouth when I sold another, I think out of state was 2021.
Mhm.
I think that's when I sold maybe the duplex. Oh no, shoot. Somewhere in my notes. Anyway, it was the result of it was
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
1031 exchange. And I
Well,
think I bought Plymouth and one additional one in Texas in spring that I was able to find. This one with financing, that one was cash. But so anyway, yeah, and the Plymouth
got it.
Street
And then you came back in
in 2023,
yeah.
every couple of years.
Yeah.
Again, 1031 out of Cleveland. That was Kistler's Ridge was a 1031 out of Cleveland. So
Okay.
going out of Cleveland, going into Jacksonville.
Cool. So we're gonna dive a little bit more into obviously you've done a bunch of 1031. You obviously think creative
Yep.
about financing. We're gonna dive into that. But first, let's look at these returns, right? So you've been doing this since 2017. You have a mix of cash and debt on your portfolio, the way that you've invested. You've had a overall performance rate of return of 13.18%. Total profit of 1.688 million. That's pretty awesome. Love telling people that they've had a profit of over a million. Home price appreciation. And now when we look at these like four profit centers, right?
Right.
We see the traditional Pac-Man here, right? Home price appreciation is the Pac-Man. It's got his mouth open because you've invested on a lot of cash. So you have a decent amount of like rental income here. Is your second biggest profit center, but it's about $400,000 in net rental income, 1.1 million home price appreciation, and then of course you have tax savings and principal pay down. I guess just overall, you look at this snapshot, you saw this last night or whenever we sent it to you. What'd you think of it? Does this match kind of like what you were tracking?
Yes, pretty much. I don't really haven't done the total portfolio rate of return. I do review the ROI reports that you produce it quarterly. So I do look at them individually. So, but yeah, the individual properties individually, they're mostly, I think almost all of them were double digits. Some of them, when they're financed, are 20 something percent return. So, that's pretty, I think that's very good.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it does match in terms of the profit, home price appreciation. So the net worth, increase, net rental income.
It's really awesome to see, Renee, right? Like it's this is kind of like when we show this idea of we have this many real estate investors that have like made over $2 million and this many over a million and this many over 500,000, right? Like it's good to put a face to a name and see and just say, in the short 8 years you've made over $1 million doing this thing. It's just kind of like it's a
Think about
number
that.
that, yeah, like it's just like
Yeah.
a wow. It's really cool. So I
I
guess
kind of look at it year from year. Actually haven't really thought about it in terms of the cumulative years. I just sort of look at each year as it goes. But okay, it is pretty good.
yeah, it makes you feel kind of
You can
special,
tell me.
right? Like
Yeah.
so it's cool to see. I wonder when you were making the decisions and you were having these conversations with JWB, do you remember if you were thinking, okay, I'm looking for a 13% rate of return, I'm expecting to make $1 million in the next 8 years, stuff like that? Like does that ring true?
I don't know that I had any preconceived idea. I had goals, of course, that I had kind of outlined with them in terms of cash flow cash flow. I think I had outlined that. So that was kind of my focus initially when I was in terms of appreciation, because, I know from being in real estate that markets go up, markets go down,
Mhm.
really, the appreciation at the end of the day when you sell is when it really matters. But, the accumulation it also does increase your net worth. So it wasn't really looking at the appreciation, the net worth increase, or other things as much as probably at that time the pro forma cash flow. I was definitely looking for positive. I think Greg may have or whoever I was dealing with on this might have outlined that initially, potentially, with the pro forma type of approach. But again, I think my focus was more of turning the increasing the income that from the property I was coming out of inside the exchange, especially when I'm doing exchanges, to what am I exchanging for? What cash flow is being exchanged? And usually you want it to increase if you're going to exchange.
Yeah.
So and that was more my primary goal at the time of purchase, but the other profit centers do matter. The tax savings. I just kind of learned this over the years. So, the depreciation write-offs, like I think it was Leslie talked about that. It's amazing. It lowers your effective tax rate. And I'm like always about lowering your tax rate. So, and then when you have a loss, when you have losses, sometimes some years my properties create losses. So, just because they've made vacancy period, turnover costs or whatever, non-payment, which is kind of rare with JWB, but the non-payment issue. But so if you have an eviction, I think I may have had one in 8 years that was an actual eviction. That was a few years back. But anyway, I think that I was really primarily looking at cash flow, and then each year when I do get ready to do taxes, I look at that. This one's a loss, this one's a gain, but they kind of offset one another. So I just say, oh, well, the loss would make a good tax write-off. I don't sweat it. So,
Yeah, 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 makes sense.
yeah.
So you mentioned a lot of things in there, right? Like a lot of qualities. You talked about the exchanges, the write-offs, the tax savings, all that type of stuff. I want to HT has a question here in the
Sure.
in the Q&A. She's saying, "Hey Renee, um, how do you see when you see how do you see property appreciation on JWB property? She's not seeing any on her property, instead showing negative. Do you have any kind of advice to that?
Negative appreciation in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I don't know.
Um, how long? I think my first question would be how long? I mean, you're not going to see it. I don't think they even report it in the first year or two. It takes a while. I mean, it does take a while. So
Yeah,
maybe it depends on when. Now, when I bought, the timing was good, admittedly, through especially 2017, pre the COVID years. And I mean, Jacksonville's definitely risen in price. So I don't know. I've not had negative appreciation.
yeah.
I mean,
What
I've
I
had
what I
periodic negative cash flow.
yeah. Yeah,
But
what I kind of like here in what HT is doing. I think HT is more of a recent investor. I can tell you that my duplex
okay.
that I bought a little bit over a year ago, when you look at it on Zillow, it just looks
Oh,
like
right,
it a does it just looks like it's like the same or less than what I bought it
right.
for.
Oh, that's
Um,
true.
yeah,
That
continue.
was a year ago, so and values do fluctuate. Well, that's true. I mean, the house I bought a year ago shows it's lower in value. I mean, they are going to go up and down. We are in, these kind of a little bit more volatile times now in the marketplace. So that's why I didn't really focus that much on it on appreciation when I was initially, and I still don't really when I'm purchasing.
Mhm.
I mean, I look at everything, but I don't like. To me, that's not the make or break because it's going to depend. I mean, you're really not losing anything until you go to sell. So,
Yeah,
I mean, and I just think from what I've researched and read over the years and just learned in being in real estate is it pretty much is residential real estate, which is one reason I wanted to get into it because it's different market. It's different than other types like commercial, which will go very business with the business cycles or following the business cycles and in industry it just can make a difference in tenant base and that kind of thing. With single family homes, if you look back, read the data and stuff from years ago, they've just I think Greg's shown some of this stuff and I've read some of it through other sources. Property prices just generally appreciate over it's a long haul type thing. You're looking at 20, 10, 20, 30 years. I mean, wouldn't even worry about it in under five or maybe even 10. I mean, what is it? I think a real estate cycle is about 10 years. So you're gonna have these like Zillow, Redfin. I use all those, and they all vary. Um, I think certain sources are stronger than others, like CoreLogic or Quantarium or Collateral Analytics. I'm not so sure about Zillow,
yeah.
Redfin, and I mean in terms of property values.
Yeah, Renee, what I'm hearing from you
Yeah,
is essentially, well, there at the end is like not all data is equal. Zillow is probably the data that you can probably punch the most holes in, but
easier.
the overall lesson is this is it's kind of like back to the core lesson that we hit on earlier. This is a long-term game, and um, it might right now, this last year has probably been like the bumpiest in the short term cycle. But as you extend this out over years, and I think everybody that is sold a property through JWB, they make sure that your plan is to be there 5 years at least, and they're telling you like
Right,
this is a long term, 10-year, 20-year play. That over time this stuff will even out, and that the make or break is the experience of being able to hold on to it and not feel like you're taking
right.
too many losses in comparison to the rest of your
Right.
portfolio.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I rarely sell in under 10 years. I think I rarely have sold that. I've sold that many of my investment properties, but I mean, I kind of think that is kind of cut off. But I mean, there's exceptions, but you still want to hold into, like I said, at least 5 years,
Yeah. Yeah.
but or longer.
Yeah. Got it.
So,
So, yeah.
yeah,
So you're saying it turns upside in 3 to 5 years. Yeah. Correct. She's saying only had a year and a half positive cash flow. Looking at annual value and online estimates, it shows a 15K decline in value. But you're saying that there'll be upside in 3 to 5 years. That's what we all believe, right? Like it'll be,
right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Totally. Cool.
I
Good
think
answer.
so. I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, it's not something I really worry about the appreciation. It's nice to see it, but
Yeah. Don't drive yourself crazy looking at it. right? Like, this
Yeah.
is not going to really change your life until it
It's
starts compounding and hitting the cycle.
honestly, I look at it as well, okay, even if my properties go up and down in value, there's nothing like the stock market these days. So I sleep like I sleep better with the real estate, you know. So it's
Yeah.
down 15, maybe it's down what, couple of percentage points or 10%. It's not like nothing like the
Yeah.
roller coaster ride.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
you're allowed to say that. I'm not allowed to say that anymore. I gotta slap
I
on the hands of that like stock market show that we did a while ago. So I want to
oh
stay away from
really?
that. But you're allowed to say that.
Oh,
Anyways,
okay.
yeah,
Sorry about
yeah.
that. Well, it's just not my thing, but I mean, great. Some people do really well, and
No, I
it's a
get it.
little just too
I,
up
I
and
get
down
it.
for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get it. I get it. So, but I do want to talk about before we have another
Yeah.
4 minutes here before we hit the hour.
Oh
Um,
gosh.
you have hit. I told you it would go quickly, right?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. It's okay.
Are you having fun though, Renee? This is what I want.
Yes,
Okay,
actually,
okay, cool, 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 cool. Just so everybody knows, Renee was very nervous about this. Doesn't do a lot of
very
public
nervous.
speaking. I think she's doing a great job. So let her know in the chat that she's doing a great job. Um,
Thanks. Thank
so
you.
yeah, that being said, you hit on tax savings. I feel like in that set of returns, right? Like you have this idea of like how much you have profited, but this doesn't really take into account the amount of taxes that you have saved by like
Yeah.
selling a property in one place and putting it somewhere else. How would you describe kind of like your perception of the tax savings that you have done with doing this 1031 exchange and how much that has added value in your ability to grow this portfolio?
I think 1031 exchanges are a great tool and strategy to use when you're selling property. When you're going to sell something, and basically as a real estate investor, because I mean you're going to keep more of your money. First of all, I
Yeah.
mean I'm in California, so well, I look at it this way: if I were to make $100,000 profit on a sale after selling, you got selling expenses, commissions, and so forth, then I'm looking at another 30, maybe 35. And if I was hiring, if somebody's higher income, it's going to be even more
Yeah.
between California and federal percentage, between California or across California and federal income taxes that year. So 100,000 now only really yields 50,000, 55, maybe 60. You're really giving away a lot of money. So on that, so I think it's critical. They are complicated. You have to use a qualified intermediary. They know what they're doing. If they're good, they move it along. You don't have to be an expert in it. I happen to know the tax law around it pretty well, but you don't have to use them. I mean, you can defer these gains indefinitely. Like I've sold out of California and, for example, into Cleveland, and then moved Cleveland to Jacksonville.
Mhm.
I'm 1031ing all the way. So I'm deferring the gain. For California investors, California has this clawback rule, which they track you, and I fill out those forms every year. So it kind of surprised me in the beginning. I got a notice saying I needed to fill these out every year. I did it the first year, but it's every year you have to report where are those investments? Where's that deferred California source deferred income or
Yeah.
gain rather?
Yeah.
And follow it till you liquidate and pay up. So it's kind of a heads up for California if you're a California resident. And the other thing I just think 1031 exchange is just really beneficial to save that money. I mean, that's another down payment the way I look at it, but
Yeah.
possibly.
Totally.
So
Yeah, I
yeah, and
like
then
I look at the way that you've used your 10 to 1 exchanges and like you were just kind of you were kind of talking about it a second ago of like you essentially hold on, I want to put it up here, but like in some of these times where you bought multiple properties, it feels like the 1031 exchange alone, like you said that you threw in an extra conventional loan with an investment of like 32K.
yeah, because I had like maybe a small balance of cash, and I thought, okay, I'll take a loan on that
Yeah.
listing property, right?
I would assume that the savings, the tax deferment from the 1031 alone probably bought you that down payment for that property right
Oh,
there, at
it
least,
probably did actually. Yeah, I'm sure, if not more. Yeah, we could have
if
bought a
not
double.
more, right? So,
Yeah,
so like I just
and
love seeing that live in action. This idea that if you can 1031 exchange, you're saving the capital gains taxes. That means like the output is like one or two extra properties when you go to actually like cash this thing out and go buy some more. I think that's a super valuable illustration. As we wrap up here, though, it's so easy to look at you and see 13 properties. I'm never going to get there. Renee's so knowledgeable. She's a pro. But I know that you had some notes here on kind of like
Yeah.
people considering a similar path and getting started. You want to kind of talk us through that?
Well, sure. Well, for that, people who would think that, I mean, I started with one property, I mean, you got to start somewhere. And again, it's it is a long game. It's a journey. It's not a race. I mean, not going to be there in a year. You build on it. Again, like these building blocks of this, to create wealth. So that's how I see real estate investing. It takes patience and it takes planning and a strategy or and set up goals, that kind of thing. So I mean, if somebody's just getting started, sometimes it's probably only going to be one property. I mean, you got to have the down payment, right, for it, and using loans. I wanted to also say, those cash out refis you've talked about. I've done that. I did 6 at one time, I think, and to get the lower 2021 rates. So you want to kind of use all these tools like the 1031 exchange as you're scaling up once you've invested in a property or two. Um, just kind of use those tools like the 1031 if you're wanting to sell something or have something else to sell. The cash out refis to generate the cash. That's the hardest part about investing in real estate is starting with the cash. I mean, and again, I started in a different time where you could take basically 90%, borrow 90%. So, I mean, I did an 80-10-10 loan and started in Austin with $20,000 investment with closing costs. It was all finance. I mean, that's not way loans really work as well today, but that was the
Yeah.
days of easy money,
Yeah.
2005.
And it got you started.
So, yeah, it got me started. But, you got to kind of, once you have that, but so the down payments are higher because prices are higher, of course. But, I am real bullish on Jacksonville and JWB because I think, especially if an investor starting out, it's just a good call in a sense because I mean I'm confident in their ability to take care of the client. Whereas again, I have a lot of experience. I've managed for investor clients. I've managed their properties, so I probably have more expertise than most investors would have, and I just think could be very stressful if you end up with a provider that or a property management company in particular where you're just not getting the same quality of service,
Mhm.
or a real estate person selling you something that's really not a good investment. I mean, it just kind of there's a lot to it. You've got to have money saved up for expenses. I'm really big on also on keeping big reserves in place.
How do you think
For
about reserves,
properties.
Renee? Like, how do like we talk about that a lot on the show, but
Yeah.
do you have like a rule of thumb of like 6,000 bucks per property, or how do you kind of like think about reserves? You have a lot of property.
Yeah. Well, I don't include my taxes and insurance payments with the mortgages on the finance property. So I basically pay those myself. That's how I like to do it. So I leave the money I'm in separate account, Jacksonville account. I mean, not including what JWB reserves per property, but I intend as the year begins each year, I figure until I have the taxes covered for the year, I can estimate them to the next year, all of the insurance premiums covered, and about 4 or 5 months in my case, 4 or 5 months of loan payments, then I don't touch the money. It just sits, I don't live off of it. So on
Got
a
it.
day to day, I mean, I'll draw when I feel comfortable doing that and knowing I'll meet those goals to make those end of year or later in the year payments. So I think it's critical to keep reserves. I don't have a dollar figure per property, but you can kind of figure mortgage payments, tax, a few months mortgage payments, your annual taxes, insurance, if that's not included in the mortgage payments, and then, a maintenance reserve. It's usually recommended like 3 to 4%. And I do keep larger amounts because there are bigger ticket things that can come up. I just like the idea of having the money there, not having to say, oh, no, I have to take it out of this account or my living expenses or something like that.
Yeah. So if I was to hear you correctly, I feel like your overall reserve strategy is keep things in accounts where you don't feel it when something has to come out of pocket. That's
Exactly.
kind of like the
I just
overall
sort of,
strategy.
it goes in and I check, obviously, there's the good deposits are coming in,
Sure.
but I leave it sit as if it were locked up. And I say, I don't like go to it each month like that, but I do have a lot of property and I have multiple accounts like that. So
Yep.
I guess I make more um, kind of cautious decisions that way. So if I decide, oh, I need 10 or $15,000 or want it for some, or need to put it somewhere, want to reinvest it or whatever the case may be, I kind of think about that before I'll do it. I just don't draw the money. So I think for somebody starting out, the big thing is don't expect to live off that income or use that income for personal expenses. If you're buying first property or second property, I would, kind of just set it aside, keep the day job, other sources of income. And that to me is the ideal scenario because you're building for the future.
Love it.
And you're building that up and you're going to save yourself a lot of grief when something big comes up because things happen. Pipes break, roofs can get things blown off, fences fall down. I mean, I've been doing management so long, I can pretty much predict about when things are going to, I mean, it depends on the weather, of course, but things are going to, air conditioning systems, HVAC systems fail. These are fairly large ticket now, not so much in Jacksonville. Again, maintenance costs are lower there. But since I deal in commercial properties, I know what it takes to put it in these kind of systems and residential as well. But so you kind of, I just think there's more peace of mind if you have the money set aside and go, oh, yeah, I can deal with this. Otherwise, it's just more of a stressful experience than it needs to be, in my opinion. But
I love it, Ray, and we're a little bit over on time, so I'm not gonna get.
yes,
There's a
right.
couple good questions here, but you also have a
Sure.
lot of love in the chat of everybody saying that you did a great job. If you want to
Thank
read that and
you.
feel good about yourself, including your
Thank you.
your spirit animal, Leslie Wilson. But that
Thank you, Leslie.
um, that being said, I think that that's a really good point to end on. Greg and I have a lot of conversations around the thing that keeps people out of this asset class or that, you know, makes them think that they're having a bad experience in this asset class is a lot about perspective and the perspective around the experience. And what I hear you essentially detailing out really well, if someone was to go back and listen to those last maybe listen to the whole show, but specifically those last 2 minutes of you explaining it, you found a way to insulate yourself from the highs and lows of it by
Right.
having a very long-term mindset to this, right? Like you explained this whole idea of you don't even look at that home price appreciation thing, kind of like you don't think about it much. You just know what's happening for you. You set up creatively accounts so that when there are expenses and when there are cash flow hits, it doesn't affect your lifestyle. It creates kind of again, like an insulation layer around the things that sometimes make people be like, why am I even doing this? Right? Because you have, again, a focus on this long-term winning mindset. And it's no surprise that you've had so much success and you've, essentially created over $1 million of wealth for yourself in a little bit under 8 years. So I think that that's a really good aha moment, a good lesson, a good, you know, thing for anybody that's coming into this asset class of that they can follow, right? If you can start with a property, if you can get yourself there, get your mindset right and set it up in a way where you are going for these markets that you trust with a vertically integrated provider that's gonna follow up on their promises, but also set yourself up to win mentally by having the right expectations, by creating systems around you that help you kind of get through this.
Yeah, I like, just like you said, it's those expectations that I've worked with new investors on the other side of things, managing, selling, buying for them. And I mean, that's just it. You have to approach it with this managed expectations from the get-go. You need to learn to, and I've had to do it. So over time, it takes time to learn to kind of roll with the setbacks, roll with the punches. Things are going to happen. The vacancies, the other unforeseen things that are not in the pro. You can use the pro forma, but realize the limitations of a pro forma. Stuff happens. You don't have control over it. Prepare for it, and then prepare for it as best you can financially. Then just kind of go, okay, it happened. That's good. Move on. So you're not, selling. I've seen people, and I've talked clients off the ledge, where I mean they just want to sell a property because too many problems. They want all that money every month, and they don't want to buy into. I've got to keep it up. But that's, in my opinion, that's not the way to go. So Because then you're kind of flipping. Short-term buying and selling doesn't yield that, in my opinion, doesn't yield that good of returns in most markets. So
We can say this stuff till we're blue in the face, but until people see somebody that has performed and done what you have done in a short amount of time, like I think that that really, really helps, Renee. So I want to really thank you for stepping out of your comfort zone, coming on camera, talking
thank
to a
you.
crowd. I have not mentioned the crowd at all today, but
Yeah.
now that we're coming off of this, we still have a whole bunch of people on. We went over an hour. They're all thanking you for your contribution. I think
Thank
there's a lot of
you,
lessons in this.
everybody.
And you did awesome. I really appreciate how much you prepared for this. The notes that you sent me made it really easy for me to kind of like tease this stuff out. I want to thank the community for showing up and being supportive as always, asking great questions, getting to the root of it. And speaking of great questions, getting to the root of it, next week GC is back. We're gonna dive into some of the questions that we've been hearing a lot on the community chat, right? Like questions around the property management agreement and using lenders and kind of like what the timing is of the market and all that stuff. We're going to do an FAQ episode with Greg, and it's going to be awesome. Hope to have everybody there, but really, Renee, you did a phenomenal job today. So I really
Thank
want
you,
to thank you.
Pablo. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the ride through the process or through the journey. So, yeah, thank you so much, Pablo.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
no, thank
I
you. And
know.
I want to shout out to the fairy godmother. If you don't want to do this journey alone, she is having her Northern California meetup, her phone
Yeah,
on May
great.
24th. Phone number is 408-833-9868. Good old fairy godmother out there sowing seeds of community everywhere she goes. That's going to be close to you, Renee. So maybe you can make it. I can connect you all
Absolutely.
if you'd like. That being said,
Thanks.
we'll be back next week. Renee, do you know how we normally sign off here?
I do. Don't be average.
Don't be average. Thank you.